Hi everybody, I'm Patrick and this is Rocky Mountain Style. Over the last few weeks since I posted my watch collection video, I've gotten a few questions as to why I ended up buying the JLC Master Control Date over other watches that are in this price bracket. So today, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Okay, so if you've watched my watch collection video, you know this was a 10th wedding anniversary from my wife. It wasn't a surprise. She didn't go pick it out and surprise me or anything like that. We did go up to the watch store and pick it out together and look at some things. We go to Hyde Park Jewelers in Denver. We work with a great salesman there by the name of John Burba, who's kind of famous in his own right. He was the gentleman who helped Teddy Baldessar do a shopping spree there at Hyde Park when Teddy was in Denver and sold Teddy a watch at the end. So really cool video. If you haven't seen that one, go watch that if you're a watch fan. But yeah, so I had several watches in mind that I wanted to look at when we went up to the watch store. The first of which was the Omega CK859. And the reason why I had this at the top of my list is one, I just loved the retro styling, thought it looked fantastic. It was a limited edition, and I had just heard recently that it was put out of production. And Hyde Park did have one, and they wouldn't be getting any new ones in. And if you look at Omega's website now, it is indeed out of production and out of stock. So I thought that was kind of cool. You know, it might be neat to have a limited edition watch that you could pick up for reasonable money. And I already have an Omega. I've got a Seamaster 300M. So I thought, it might be cool to be like, an Omega guy, at least check it out. However, when I got there and looked at the watch, it was significantly more gray. It's the dial's silver, but it was significantly darker and grayer than it looks in the pictures. To the point where, for my eyes at least, it kind of harmed the legibility and really had no pop whatsoever on the wrist. I did like the watch. I love the hand wind coaxial movement in there. It looks fantastic, and it would have been a really cool watch, but ultimately it just didn't feel right. Um, so two other watches on my list were IWCs. Big fan of IWC. I like the story of the company starting in America and then moving to Switzerland. So the first watch I looked at from IWC was the Pilot's Chronograph Spitfire bronze case watch with that olive green dial. So really like green, as many of you who've watched the channel know. Big fan of green watches, big fan of green clothes, all sorts of stuff like that. However, the watch, I mean, maybe bronze, I think I realized on this particular trip just wasn't quite for me. I liked how it looked. It was neat. It would have been a cool piece to have in my collection, but something about the bronze just turned me off. And it wasn't the fact that it would change in patina. Just looking at it on wrist, it just didn't feel right. The other IWC I considered was another Pilot's Chronograph. This one, not bronze, just the regular edition, but with the green dial. And I probably could have picked it up in either the bracelet or the brown leather strap, but they had neither at the store, and so you you can't buy what you can't see, right? So ultimately, that got me off of IWC, but they're still completely on my radar for future purchases. After that, we went and looked at a Breitling that I had on my list, the Navitimer B01 41 millimeter in the mint dial. And Navitimers, just because of how busy they are and how much they have going on, have just always spoken to me. I'm not sure why, because I do like simple dials as well, but this one, the busyness of it it's like the one busy watch that I think is really well done and really cool. So a lot of the Navitimers, of course, as many of you know, huge 46 millimeters, things like that. Wasn't interested in that. So the fact that they're making smaller ones now, I mean, they have for several years, but they're making smaller ones now is a good thing. So I did have that on wrist. I was really, really surprised at how comfortable the bracelet was. Probably the best bracelet I've ever felt. And I haven't had every watch on wrist, of course, but the Breitling bracelet was really nice. And that was in high consideration to pick up for my 10th anniversary gift. Then when we were over in the Breitling part of the store, I saw the Premier B09 chronograph again with actually it's not a mint dial this time. I think they call it pistachio. But man, it was absolutely gorgeous. Beautiful watch, super classy. Had it on the leather strap, looked fantastic. Something about it though just didn't speak to me. I liked it, I liked the specs, but it didn't give me a wow factor, even though I really, really enjoyed how it looked. So then we walked back across the store to the JLC counter because I had a JLC Polaris, and Those of you who may think this kind of stuff is funny, notice I haven't pronounced the name of the watch yet. It's one of those things where you try and you want to do it right and you end up messing it up, or it ends up sounding weird to native speakers or whatever. So I've been practicing. So here we go. So we walked over to the Jaeger-LeCoultre counter and looked at the Polaris. The Polaris was a pretty huge letdown in my mind. I really like the looks of it. Sort of half. I mean, it's a full-up dive watch, right? That's the history of the watch, but kind of like halfway between a dive watch, kind of a field watch, everyday sort of expedition watch. So it has a nice rugged aesthetic to it, which is different than most JLCs in the line. But as soon as I had that on the wrist, about 5 seconds later, I knew it just wasn't quite for me. There was no wow factor. Didn't look anywhere near as good in person as it did in pictures. And so at that point, I was really thinking that I was probably going to end up with the Breitling. But John asked me, hey, do you have any desire, Patrick, to try on the Master Control Date? And I said, all right, I'll give it a go. We're here. We have the keys open. I also tried on a Reverso, which I thought was very cool. Maybe in the future, when I have some spare money lying around, right, for something that niche. But Reverso was cool. But yeah, tried on the Master Control Date. And as soon as I put it on and held it, the first thing I noticed was how thin it was. All the other watches, of course, most of them have been chronographs, so significantly thicker, 13, 14 mils, something like that. The Master Control Date is less than 10 millimeters thick, so super thin. Feels like a quartz on the wrist. Feels like a quartz Timex or something like that as far as its thinness. And the deployant clasp leather band was already perfectly sized to my wrist. So it was kind of like fate, right? But as I was standing there looking at the watch, and John was, going through the history of the company and telling me about them being the watchmakers, stuff like that, telling me how there's one guy in that the headquarters in Switzerland heat blues the second hand, and that's like his only job and stuff like that. I was just looking at it and thinking, why do I like this simple, dressy, classy watch so much? And as I was sitting there, I really couldn't put my finger on it. There's just something about it that felt right. I mean, just a killer watch, super classy. And I was, sitting there staring at it, just kind of falling in love, right? And I guess that's kind of how the watch game works, right? You don't really know why you like what you like. You just do. So ended up buying the watch that day. Very happy. That was about 7 months ago. And in the past 7 months, I've had a little more time to think about maybe why it is I gravitated towards this instead of things that are sort of more on brand for me, I guess. Liking dive watches, field watches, things with a little more ruggedness, a little more utility. And what I came down to was the fact that this watch was being purchased as a gift to commemorate, being married to my wife for 10 years. Hopefully the first of many decades. But you hit a major milestone like that, and it's a unique thing. You go into the double digits. It's fun to go out to dinner, tell everyone. Everyone's hey rah rah, and all that kind of stuff. So it feels special. There's something different about that particular anniversary because it's your first one that hits that double digit mark. And so the watch kind of represented that in my mind as well, where you've got something that's different than what you normally might go for. This is a dressy watch. I wouldn't quite call it a dress watch because it does have, it's got a date. It's got the Arabics at 12, 3, 6, and 9. And so it tends more towards the everyday watch, right? But it's dressy, it's classy. And for me, I liked the idea of having something special tied to that. Because whenever we go out for future anniversaries, or if we go to other people's weddings or things like that, likely I'll be wearing this watch to other special occasions, and it will always remind me of that special occasion. Also, I think, too, given that it's not similar to a lot of the other watches I have or that I might buy in the future, I think obviously there's no chance I'm going to get rid of it, but I don't think there's any chance that I would get tired of it either. So with, even with my Seamaster now that I've had for a year and a half, kind of getting tired of it, to be honest with you. So I might be looking to trade that in or sell it and maybe pick up something different in the near future. But I just didn't think there was any chance I would ever get tired of this watch, which is great because I plan on having it for the rest of my life. So that's the story as to why I picked up the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Control Date for my 10th anniversary gift. And real quick before we go, I wanted to bring Rolex into the picture. I've been on the wait list for almost 2 years now, I think, waiting for an allocation for a Rolex. I don't expect one anytime soon, but I did briefly consider buying a used 39mm Explorer, but I decided ultimately not to do that because for a gift for an anniversary like this, I wanted something new that didn't have memories on somebody else's wrist. Wanted it to sort of be all for me and all for my family. So probably gonna have a Rolex in the future if I ever get an allocation and if I have money at the time whenever that allocation comes. But yeah, who knows? And if I do, you guys will be the first to see it. So thanks a lot for tuning in today. Have a good day.